Good evening and welcome to tonight's Monday Live. Today I'm joined by one of our fitters, Nick. So normally I've got someone who's older than me, taller than me and greyer than me. And Nick is younger, better looking, better at golf. So I lose on all counts this week. First things first, congratulations on your win representing Castle Royal at the Champion Club competition recently.
Yeah.
Were you top scorer?
No, not quite individually. No, I think four or five under got it in the end, individual score, but it's a team event, free scores count. And was delighted to not let the boys down, to be completely honest with you, a bit under practiced. So
it's an English Champion Club, which means you now go on to the finals in Spain?
Europeans in France, actually, Bordeaux, Golf de Medoc.
Of course,
we played that in 2018.
Yeah.
Lovely course. If anybody's ever been out there, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Kind of reminds me a little bit of the Surrey Heathland courses.
Because they've got wine bottles on the tees.
Exactly.
Very sorry, that one. Yeah.
Exactly, but beautiful. 2018 was lucky enough to play with against the Hoygaard brothers. 17 at the time, blew me away. So I'll report back on which young superstars we get to play with this time around.
And so when you play with someone who goes on to that kind of career, it's quite eye-opening when you play with someone who is that good.
Very cool, calm and collected for a 17-year-old. Had all the shots at that age. Absolute superstar in the makings, and obviously he's fulfilled his promise. So yeah,
disgraceful, really.
Yeah.
Shout out obviously to Kate as well. Just come back from Stuttgart this weekend, competing, first competition of the year, and wasn't bad. I think we're fair to say. Not only is now British record holder, but is world record holder for age group. So I mean, a disappointing start to the season. No, I mean, all joking aside, I mean, we all have seen the continued work she's put in, and the new training regime, and to come out with that result on a time where part of the track, the rock zone, for those that know what it is, was longer. So she's actually come out with a time that beat the record by 30 seconds. So that could have been a minute and 30 seconds from what I gather. So a fantastic result.
Continues to blow us away. But hard work prevails, as always.
It does. There is no substitute, sadly. Hence, painful winter to come, I believe.
Yeah.
So, obviously the golf this weekend. We'll start off being a little bit of a précis. I mean, President's Cup.
Yeah.
President's Cup, I'm always a little bit disillusioned by how the international team, with the players they've got, obviously there are, both teams had a couple of live players missing. You could quite easily have put Bryson and Brooks into the US team. Yeah. And the internationals missing Cam Smith, Joachim Neiman in particular, those sort of key names. I just don't know how they can't get closer.
I don't know, they just flatter to deceive a little bit, don't they? I mean, in terms of world rankings and week in, week out on the PGA Tour, you'd think it would be a closer competition than it is, but they just tend to have the beating of them, especially on home soil for the US team.
I don't
know, can't quite put my can't put my finger on it really. You look at that team, even at the top end, you thought some of those matches at the top might have been a little bit closer than they were, but Schauffele, Scheffler blew them away, to be honest with you.
Well, Scheffler lost to Matsuyama on the last.
Well,
and that kind of shows where there are players. I mean, Scotty seemed, as in Adam Scott, seemed overplayed possibly. I mean, he's my age. He's an old boy now.
Yeah.
But I think it's just a pity, because I think that should be that bit closer. It was a great comeback on day two. 5-0, 5-0.
Yeah.
And you thought, all right, we're really into it. And then a bit of handbags.
Does show you how good the European side is. To get one over them again, last Ryder Cup, I guess, as well, kind of shows a bit of tactically how good the European side is, because it wasn't too dissimilar. There was a few changes in there for the US team, but to show you how good that European side played.
But it is interesting, because there is the tactics at play, pairings, who's rested, who's not. And we generally have a few from the American side of the pond on. It'd be fascinating to know what you guys think about why the US are so dominant in President's Cup, yet Ryder Cup seems almost like the team kind of forgets how to enjoy themselves, the amount that they did this last weekend. They looked so connected and together, and then to come in undercooked for the last Ryder Cup. It'd be fascinating to know what you guys think as well.
Yeah.
And then Spanish Open, Hidalgo beating Rahm in a playoff. I mean, two Spaniards at the top. I mean, you couldn't wish for better, could you?
Through the kitchen sink, Adam Rahm, but he didn't give. And I think, funny enough, Mark, who's another one of the fitters, was saying he felt like after watching him in the previous days, he's our correspondent. Felt like Hidalgo might have, given under the pressure, but actually, I mean, if anything, he came good. He looked even better under it.
The only time,
great tee shots. The last couple
the only
of
time
holes.
was that the putt to win.
Yeah.
On the last was, and even he hit the putt and he kind of with his hand.
Yeah.
And he was obviously feeling that for the win. But then the way he closed it out with that birdie on the third playoff hole.
Hit a couple of great tee shots up there, put the pressure back onto Rahm, who eventually pulled one left into a difficult position. And I mean, great win.
He plays a properly Spanish style as well, because he's a bit, I wouldn't say all over the shot, but there are some
great hands.
One of the recovery shots, he hit this sort of lob wedge that he hit as hard as he would a full-on driver to get back in position, then hold a 20-foot putt for birdie. Proper inspiration from Seve kind of player.
You could see it meant a lot to him as well, which is great to see on the DP Tour. Again, still, guys from their home country winning their championships means a lot to them still. So.
Yeah, and not someone with a bit of character, someone who's not just the kind of the, I say faceless, but the kind of emotionless robot. I think it's great to see someone who's got a bit of something to watch and get excited with.
In a way, it was almost nice to see him get one over on Rahm coming back from Live. I don't know. I just think out of the two guys, Rahm obviously hugely successful last couple of years. It was nice to actually see Hidalgo get that one over the line.
So that's a little bit around. We've got Dunhill Links coming up this weekend, so that'll be always an interesting one with the amateurs. I kind of feel like the amateurs should maybe move out the way on the final day.
Yeah.
But always great players, big name players always playing that.
Great courses.
To see. Yeah, it's just fingers crossed the weather holds.
Well, I don't know. I quite like watching them struggle in the rain.
Yeah, true. But we don't want Armageddon-like weather, but so it runs through.
I don't mind seeing them playing some of the wet stuff, the waterproofs, and every so often, can't have it all your own way.
So. As with ever, I'm going to start off. We've already had some questions coming in before the feed started, so thank you for that. As I send as many questions in, we've got quite a few to get through already, but we'll crack through as many as possible.
Yeah.
And so any questions at all, send them our way. Obviously, today probably not the coaching side of things. So once Stu's back in, hopefully next week, then we'll field more of the technique-based. We will, if it's relevant for us to answer that, we will pitch in. But any of the tech side of things, then send them our way. So I'll get going from the top down. Brandon Law, there are kind of a couple elements to this. Hi guys, how do I know if a shaft is too tip heavy or the swing weight is too heavy? And there was a follow-up with, how do I know if I've tipped a shaft too much? Now, Brandon's a friend of ours from Hong Kong. I mean, if you've tipped a shaft too much, then you probably ruined the shaft because you've got to tip it an awful lot. So tipping it, you're shortening the parallel section of the shaft right down the bottom.
Yeah.
So all you're doing is you're slightly firming up the bottom end. So it's hard to do it too much. If you're a low flight player, then you lose a bit of feel and a bit of kick, but that shouldn't really negatively affect the performance. I mean, from a swing weight, from a tip heavy or swing weight point of view, I mean, we see it all the time in the bay.
Yeah.
And the bottom end, the club will drop behind. You'll have to fetch at it. So you tend to see left-right dispersion control losing, I would say.
Yeah, and it affects different level players in different ways. So sometimes if you get a better player with more educated hands, let's say, if it drops behind them, they'll try and save it a little bit more. So you might get somebody who actually starts to turn it a little bit too much. Yeah. I sometimes see in the bay anyway. If you get somebody who's not quite as experienced, doesn't handle weight quite so well, it gets stuck behind and then they'll kind of flare it out to the right. So either way, you start to get that left-right dispersion is what I typically start to see. So actually you have that void in the middle that you want to see. Yeah. And you've got that, short right, longer left sort of dispersion, I would say, typically is what I tend to see in the bay anyway.
But if it's just balance point, it shouldn't feel hard work to swing. It should just feel like a kind of a late catapult through the ball, if anything, or the club just hangs behind and flares out right. So basically you kind of cover all shot bases within that in some respects. But yeah, it'll feel like the club face gets out of control on you. I mean, great name, this one, Alien Blob 21. I mean, clearly I hope you like sci-fi. I was wondering what the balance point of the Open CT 100 is compared to some more common shafts. We'll do that first. There's a secondary one which we'll follow up with. I mean, the CTs are generally a higher balance shaft, so I'd compare them more to things like the similar weight, the KBS Tour Light. That would be one that would be quite similar. In steel, you tend to be the KBSs. Yeah, I think they're one of the higher balance shafts.
Definitely.
And any of the other, composite-wise, there are some that are quite similar.
Yeah, if you're looking at maybe something like a steel fibre or something along those lines, the Acras come out pretty high balance, don't they? The Acra I series that we've got here as well. But certainly in steel, if I'm looking to try and give somebody stability and they sit into that weight range of the 100 or the 115. You're a CT.
CT 115.
CT 115. So if you want something where you want to try and take it up the shaft for the individual, then they're fantastic for that. Yeah, definitely.
And very consistent on picture flight as well.
Well, they're great build quality, right, in terms of the collaboration element of Shimada and CT and the Open. So yeah.
And then secondary one, any shaft similar to the discontinued Tour AD TP. Now, technically it probably isn't discontinued. They will make some. In theory, they should still be gettable. Graphite Design technically don't ever stop making a shaft. If there's demand for them, they'll still make them, but it might be a long wait. So given that highly enjoy the Tour AD TP5X and the driver, what's similar to that and what's similar in a fairway and a hybrid? Now, TP was mid to lower spin, but kept some feel through. I would, over their current range, I'd go XC.
XC, yeah, definitely.
It's not too harsh on the handle, stable in the tip.
Yeah.
I think that one, probably of most brands, I don't think you get that same level of feel and a relatively stable tip in many other shafts.
No, they're always nice and smooth feeling the Tour series from Graphite Design.
Fairway wise, I mean, TP5X is going to be kind of around the 60 gram dead weight mark. So I'd say fairway kind of lower 70s. Because this came through earlier, we had a brief chat. I'd probably go IZ or IZ, depending on where you're based, in the 7. That's at a 72 to 74 grams. So that sits a bit of kick in the tip, but not balance-wise pretty similar.
Yeah.
Think of anything else?
No, I wouldn't go. You wouldn't be looking at DI because it's going to be a little bit too heavy dead weight and it's going to be a little bit too tip balanced as well. So are we keeping within the Graphite Design range?
Well, that would be within Graphite Design. I mean, if we were to go outside of that, that's an interesting one because it's that smoothness of feel, I think, that you'd struggle to get through many other shafts.
Yeah, because as soon as you start going into the Ventus range, it's a bit higher balance point. So.
Maybe the new red.
Yeah, new red's definitely a bit more mid to tip.
That's going to be a bit more handle firm. So maybe first gen red, actually. That's a bit less handle firm in first gen red, but it's going to swing heavier in the tip.
They definitely swing differently, the new reds compared to the old reds, absolutely, yeah. I mean, that would definitely be worthwhile putting on the list for that chap to try, for sure.
So, and hybrid-wise, hybrid shafts feeling that smooth. I'd almost be inclined to say, depending on how heavy you wanted to go, there's I'm going to go back to the Tour AD, the HY75. That's at 78 grams. That's going to be really smooth. That's going to kick it up a bit more, but that's going to be a really smooth shot.
Yeah, I think that's going to be predominantly weight, isn't it, there? So I think if you go too heavy on that one, you might come a bit undone. So that was one. Again, I
think that would be the most obvious one.
Yeah,
so.
Some of the TPTs.
Hope that helps.
Yeah.
Matthew, got a tendency to slow down through impact, which is making me lose length and accuracy. Do you have a drill for this, please? Great show. Thank you very much indeed. So for us, from a fitting point of view, if someone's stalling out and losing a little bit of, or not able to continue to swing through, I guess is the kind of the main thing.
Yeah.
What would, from a fitting point of view, what would be your initial thought for that?
Well, I'll be looking at weight and dead weight of the shaft. I'll be looking at swing weight, most importantly. Generally, I think if somebody is struggling to get the club through, it's generally a sequencing thing. You know, the sequence is wrong, so from the top, there'll be upper body rather than lower body, so it kind of the energy is wasted here. But it's going to be weight of shaft, it's going to be swing weight, length of shaft maybe with driver as well, just to see is it getting stuck behind them and therefore they're having to sort of lose it. They're casting a little bit here as well. So they'd be the first kind of port to call. Depends what the golfer brings to the table weight-wise as far as I'm concerned. Other than that, if everything looks pretty good in that regard, it's up to the coaches upstairs and they've got to work on sequencing ultimately.
Yeah, and the only other one could be general little mobility. To pelvis, lower back mobility. If you can't carry that hip rotation through, then you're going to stand up out of it and flip it.
Makes you shook it,
and I mean, the short answer is there could be a heck of a number of things.
Yeah, it could be. But generally, I think you'd be looking at kinematic sequence and sequence in there. Yeah, I think so.
That's technical wording as well. Kinematic sequence. So it's already better than me already. Unlimited power, 888. Very good again, very good. Weight is king, but what about distribution of weight? Very good point. Total weight's the same. I'm assuming if total weight's the same as a function of a heavier shaft but lighter grip versus same total weight and a lighter shaft but heavier mid-size / grip and more head weight. Huge effect on how you deliver the club.
Yeah.
the total weight is going to be dictate. If the total weight is suitable, then you and the club can move, generally speaking, as one, and the club's not dropping behind you or getting away from you as a complete unit through the ball. But weight distribution is critical to how you build speed. Which muscle groups you use. If you're someone that kind of snaps the hips and kicks hard, then a heavy tip end is going to drop behind you, and the heavier handle end, heavier grip might help kind of bring everything through in one go. If you're someone who pulls hard on the handle, if you lose the club head, then you're going to lose the club face. You need the club to drop into your swing plane. So I'm never a fan of the term release, because I think golfers think of a rotating club head, but actually you're using, I would always use balance point and swing weight to time when that club head's arriving relative to someone's kind of hand action, and the dead weight to blend the player and the body and knit that together. But both bits are really critical.
And taking that even a step further now, because we blow grips on and off to try, and because we found that's a big influence over total weight of golf club and balance. But then also now we've noticed even where the CG placement is in the heads for things like drivers and how that helps with the head releasing. And I know you've done a lot with that this year. Yeah. And I think that's been a bit of an education for me, certainly the last couple of seasons, seeing how weight extremely far back tilts it open for individual release patterns and deliveries, right? And then other guys, you get it a bit further forwards, it helps square them up. That's starting to become a thing with these modern day heads, definitely.
But I think, as you say, the last couple of years where we're now going so much lighter in the crown, in the centre of the sole, where tightness issue have put some weight forward as well as back. And the most forgiving head can actually spray it, because the weight at the back gears the face open. If you've ever tended to open the face in transition, then it's going to fan it open even more, because that weight sits away from the shaft. So we're actually using some less forgiving heads to help less able players square the face up. Yeah. Who thought we'd be doing that 5 years ago?
Absolutely, yeah. So actually sometimes in principle, the shaft that you've picked off the rack can be good, but in the past, maybe the head might have, we'd have been a bit confused by how the head was performing on that shaft. But nowadays, based on what we know, we can go back to the rack, pick a different head on, and actually the head starts to perform the way we expected it to. So that's definitely seen that the last couple of years.
I think with a head like actually the Cobra, the Dark Speed X with the Callaway, the Triple Diamond Max, the ability to shift the weight back and forward and literally just test just that weight position. The versatility of the heads now to isolate that one thing, and you find weight back for some players, like for me, I know it does. Fans right, weight forward, squares up. And you can really prove that theory so much more easily now.
Definitely seen that this year.
Golf Nerd 3, hi Simon, finding Ventus TR Red 5S too butt stiff, but normal Ventus Red 5S is too butt soft. Is there anything you could recommend in between? It's an interesting one, this, because we all feel shafts differently, and when we get a new shaft in, we'll all hit it. We'll try and all do it collectively as much as we can, or at least pool ideas, because we all sense the zonal stiffness differently.
Definitely, absolutely.
And so, I mean, yes, there will be shafts in between, but it's whether actually, like the first gen Ventus Red, I don't think it was that butt soft, very much more the lower half feel. Yeah. But then how I load the shaft and how you do will be different, completely, so you will feel it differently.
Correct, so, yeah. I don't really pull on the handle a huge amount.
Yeah, so you're very much body turn and quiet arms.
Yeah, so our feels from a shaft are different, but that's all, we throw that all into the same pot as a team. We all swing the golf club differently, I would say, in the team. So I'm quite neutral to a certain extent, but then it's always good to get
better at scoring than the rest.
No, but it's always good to get you're quicker than me, so it's good to get your opinion, and you have a more distinct change in direction. So ultimately, everybody comes in the bay, everybody's different, so you need to have the opinion of everybody in that regard in terms of how they're gonna. What they're feeling,
certainly if you're more rotational or more, say you're more neutral. I guess going between those, certainly the TR definitely tightens the butt section up quite a bit. So it's definitely understandable if you're not someone who kind of pulls on the handle, who loads the butt section heavily, the TRs can feel a bit dead for sure.
It's also a bit heavier.
A little bit, a couple of grams heavier.
So you might be picking up on that potentially as well. Again, I always think weight is.
I mean, falling somewhere in between. If you want to keep the butt section a little bit more stable, but keep the tip responsiveness, such a new shaft that we just put in, the Tour AD, the GC, I thought it feels quite tight. I was just surprised at how tight / crisp at impact, rather than feeling kind of loose through the bottom end. You get a bit of kick through the lower half, but it stays fairly stable. But it's very kind of what I call vanilla in the grip end. I think it's quite a neutral grip section. So that might be quite an interesting one to try.
Yeah.
I guess, again, depends how, we all feel things differently. Depends how responsive you want it to feel, how crisp, how tight, and it is that case of kind of testing 2 or 3 different ones around a certain theme and seeing.
The question we always ask when you come into the bay is, what do you want this club to do ultimately in terms of flight, characteristics, shot shape, and then really based on that, the feel you start to move through the shafts in terms of trying to fit those 2 things together in terms of what the feel is for the golfer and what they want characteristic wise. Ultimately, that's the way I would do it anyway. So
and as James pointed out, every graphite design shaft, the 2 initials have a meaning, and so the GC, for those in the UK, they might say the Gemma Collins. The GC stands for Game Changer. There you go, bit of pub quiz trivia for you.
Not Gemma Collins.
Not Gemma Collins. That's just the kind of a colloquialism.
She plays golf.
Vision force and this is an interesting one. This is about sort of spine and peering and spine positioning. Is there a case for positioning the spine of the shaft to limit a certain miss? The context is got a tailor-made driver, recently turned the loft down and noticed it was hard to draw. Thought it was the face angle issue, but feel it's actually the shaft giving resistance. Know for a fact the spine was at 6 p.m. at the stock setting. Now, probably if it was correctly spined, then the spine would be at target side. But by turning the loft sleeve, it's moved at 40 degrees or so. It feels stiffer, but definitely limits the left miss. Wondering if this is something we've looked into before. It's an interesting one, this, because if you get the whole kind of spining and peering side of things, if you get a rotter of a shaft that has a best point, then the last thing you want to do is move it off the target side position, because it can create a heck of a lot of instability. But using it, my own opinion is I wouldn't move it off either target facing. You can put it behind. So as in kind of, if you're talking about your target facing is 3 o'clock, looking down on the club, if you're a right-hander, then you can position it at 9 o'clock, and in theory it kicks it through a little bit more and puts a hair more flight on. I personally would always put it in target leading.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think there is some legs to that potentially, where it could prevent a particular miss to a certain extent. It depends how consistent the individual is who's using it to a certain extent. But I mean, look, just put it in its plane line, get it pured, put it in its plane line, keep it in its plane line. I think is. I mean, it's still. I mean, the principle is
it'd be the last that it's orienting itself towards that spine as it recovers. It's recovering back onto that point, but you're still adding a bias, some kind of bias to it, but you don't know how much you are, and it's not going to be consistent shaft to shaft as to what it achieves or the extent of what it changes. So I'd be looking much more at the makeup of the head, the CG position of the head from a gearing point of view, and then the general setup from a shaft profile, swing weight, balance point to influence that and your swing, rather than taking that spine out of position. But that's
it would be the last call, the last port of call. I think there's other things, other areas we definitely explore first before we went down that route. I think.
Unlimited power 888. Which QI10 model is the original sim most comparable to? That's going to be the LS. So original sim was weight forward and designed for lower spin. So the LS would be the closest to what they call the core model QI10 is actually quite a low spin head.
It is,
as long as you don't have a heel miss.
Yeah.
Then it's a really high spin head.
Yeah.
But if you're a neutral to slight toe strike, that head's great.
Yeah. Definitely on the lower side of everything we've gone on the rack, I would say. Yeah, I'd say the sim probably sat between the standard QI10 and the LS. Yeah. Maybe not quite as low as the new LS.
Yeah, that definitely pulls it.
Yeah, that's that way. But I'd sit between them probably, I would say.
Alien Blob 21. Is there a case for adding lead tape to a shaft if it's just a touch too light? For example, 100-gram shaft, but I want it at 103. I mean, ultimately, it would be not that dissimilar from from a weight point of view to a hard step, as long as you're putting it through the middle section of the shaft rather than affecting kind of handle end or head end. it just might need reapplying regularly.
Did see Rosie did that with a recent driver setup. A friend of the company, Dave Langley, does a little bit of that with some of his clubs up towards the grip end. So yeah, there is people who are doing it.
I think it's just mass, isn't it?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and you're not changing any other properties. So yeah, there certainly is a bit of a kind of a fiddle around. There's certainly merit to that. For sure.
If you're somebody who's very sensitive to swing weight, and that's again the last port of call that you want to try and absolutely get it dialed in. I definitely know you've got some clients who are very particular on their swing weights.
Mr. Brandon Law, who was at the top of the show, massively sensitive. He and his brother as well. Clearly something in the genetics.
In the genes,
there. And that will be noticeable.
Yeah,
even a couple of grams.
As much as that, yeah, definitely.
Chris Burgess, I'm resurrecting my Mizuno TP 2000s that I played from 93 to 2003. Fitting TT, were you even bought, you were, were you even playing golf then?
97,
yeah. He's not as young as he looks.
Sevy's Ryder Cup got me playing golf. I watched that and I thought, that looks great fun.
Fitting True Temper 100 reg shafts in and Z-cord mid-size grips, do you think I should make them 2 degrees stronger to stop me looking like a wimp? Well, now, we couldn't possibly comment on what you look like, but 2 degrees stronger will put 5 or 6 yards on, and they will be an old school standard loft on the 6-iron was, when you go back to probably 32 degrees.
Yeah.
So even if you do 2 degrees, it's still going to be where 30, where a standard blade would be now.
Yeah.
So they won't be overly strong. It'll offset them a little bit.
Yeah, I'd also be careful with that one because they're probably going to be built at a slightly shorter length. From that generation, and he's putting mid-sizes onto them, so make sure you get them swing weighted correctly.
Yeah, so the good side is they're the Z cords, which aren't a heavy one.
Yeah.
They're one of the better ones for you to use for sure. So there's all gold heads. I remember seeing a set of them. I did get Golf Club envy from one chap. Andrew Homan, hi guys, driver and woods are a priority, but plan to upgrade the whole bag. Really want to go through a full bag experience, but no, I won't be buying the whole lot at once. What do you suggest I do?
Well, I still think it's worth doing the full bag, but you can break it up ultimately. But yeah, I still think it's worthwhile because it keeps a bit of continuity as well, and it's good for the fitter to be able to see how everything blends together. There's multiple different ways you can break it up. You know, I think for some individuals, breaking it up into wood fit, iron fit is a good way to do it. If fatigue is something that you potentially feel you're going to suffer with, if there's a priority and you might feel like the woods are something that you want to focus on right now. But I mean, ultimately, if you can come down and you can do the full bag for the fitter, that's great because then you can really piece everything together. Yeah. So from a loft perspective, you can have the full conversation on the day, which I think ideally I'd prefer to do it that way.
Yeah. Either that or what some clients do is come over, stay the night and do the iron fit, or we'll do one fit in the afternoon and do before and one fit the following morning with the same fitter. Yeah. So that's a way of doing it where it kind of it gets around some of the fatigue side of things. But I agree, in an ideal world, you can then look at where are the long end of the irons at, where are the fairway woods at, how do you kind of work the shots in between, what kind of shots do you want in flight, and so you can get the best idea of what's going to make the biggest difference as well.
And certainly from ourselves, we're able to break things up, so everything's kept on record. So even if you decide to go for something 6 months down the line, all the specs are there, it can be pulled back up again and you can go with it. And even if there's a change in model, you can still have a conversation with your fitter about, well, I was in this head, it's now moved on to a new head, what are your thoughts, and you can still put that set together.
Just, I think that's one of the misconceptions is you could go through a full bag fit and you don't have to go ahead with a whole lot. I mean, you can do it, okay, I wouldn't do it iron by iron, but you can do just the driver, you can do the fairway woods and hybrids, or you can do the irons, or you can do the wedges, and you can say, right, what's going to make the biggest difference to your game is this bit.
Exactly.
And priority-wise be this, then that, then that, then that. And, some people do go ahead with a whole lot, but, equally speaking, if you want to graduate it and get used to the changes gradually rather than all in one hit, then that's another way of doing it.
Sometimes,
let alone the economic reasons as well.
Yeah, and sometimes people come in when they do a full bag and they feel like they need to focus a bit of time on, a bit of attention on one part of the bag. Yeah. And actually when you go through other parts of the bag and you see some results that can be had, actually that starts to, all of a sudden the golfer goes, that wasn't going to be the main focus driver today, but now dispersion's improved, distance improved, and that, I think actually that's something that I can't leave on the table. And actually the irons aren't a million miles away. We've tweaked them, maybe a swing weight change, loft lie, etc., and they're a little bit closer to where I want them to be, and actually they'll do for the time being. You don't know until you go through the process with the fitter, but I think in an ideal scenario, you'd cover everything in the one hit.
Hope that was useful. Doug, apart from an obvious weight difference, what can I expect to feel different between a Dynamic Gold R400 and a Project X LZ 115? It's 115 gram. So dead weight wise, the R400 is 126 grams.
Yeah,
and the LZ's 115 grams. LZs are, LZ stands for loading zone. So the midsection is a bit softer than a standard Project X, but it's still quite a tight playing shaft. I think the balance is a bit more on the tip end of that.
Definitely, heavier balance,
Whereas in the kind of when I say standard, I mean the full weight Dynamic Golds, they're actually really neutrally balanced. So you'll get more feel out of the R400 because it's softer, and the LZ is going to feel tighter, but then there's the 10 gram weight difference.
Yeah, actually, in terms of the way they swing, depending on the individual, depending on whose hands you put it in, they might actually feel quite similar in more. And although you've got the heavier dead weight, because of the heavier balance of the LZ, when you just pick it up, they might feel almost kind of similar, I think.
But again, I mean, it's really one of those where if you need the weight, the R400 is going to time better and bind your strike together. And if you don't need the weight, then the LZ is going to feel a darn sight easier to move, I think, ultimately. I Love Turtle 315. Good evening, sir. 2 weeks in a row in the dungeon. What has Stu done to deserve this? Rumour has it he quite likes the dungeon, being chained up and all that, manacles. And, no, Stu's actually at an event today. I hope he hasn't got soaking wet. So sadly, he was trying his heart out to get out of it, but he couldn't. So hopefully, back next week.
Drying out currently, probably.
Drowning his sorrows in the bar from being soaked. But so it's a rarity, but we'll hopefully be back. Well, it's not hopefully in terms of kicking Nick out of here, but hopefully Stu will be back with us next week. So, Shane Delmo, g'day guys. I'm from Bali. I was going to say from Australia. Can you please suggest a graphite iron shaft with the same profile as Modus 105 stiff? Thank you.
Modus 105 stiff.
So soft butt section.
Yeah.
Stiff. So Modus designed for soft butt for feel, stiff tip for dispersion. Axiom's not a million miles off from a balance point of view as well, but it's going to feel tighter.
Yeah, going to get the weight right on that one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing, if you're going to go into a, now it doesn't say weight actually. So profile-wise, you can get a similar profile. At the same weight, the graphite's going to feel firmer because there's more material.
Exactly.
So that's relatively unavoidable. I mean, the other one, maybe the Aqua, the TZ's another one, but that swings more tip heavy actually. Yeah,
it's not a direct like for like.
I think if you're going to get
Axiom.
a similar, if you want the same sort of feel, then you're going to have to drop a bit of weight or go to a softer tip. So it's not quite going to be the same, but I would say Axiom's probably the closest overall.
Good shafts.
But won't feel the same.
Good shafts.
Papa B, hello young men. As I always said, he does say young men each week. I just, because Stu's not here, I wonder whether you changed it for that. What do you boys look for when it's time to replace your irons? Are there any deal breakers that would eliminate a model from consideration? Thanks. So for me, the way we fit, we always get the shaft first. So I've done that simply because I don't believe that, and others do it the other way around, and we're not saying don't do it that way around, but for me and for us, we believe that if you get the shaft right first, you get a truer picture of someone's timing and strike, and then a true picture of their ball flight. Once you know that, then you can fit for flight, for spin profile, and forgiveness. So that would be my starting point on iron head, for sure. Yeah,
also head weight to a certain extent, based on where we feel like the golfer needs to be from a swing weight profile. There's certain heads that are just naturally heavier, and some manufacturers have, A and B head weight, so to speak, in terms of lighter and standard. So it depends on what length is required. Ultimately, what shaft is gonna be the best fit for the golfer once we've cycled through a couple. And then for me personally, I work with dynamic loft quite a bit, so it's about getting the dynamic loft into the right spot in terms of where I'm going to go, stronger in loft or weaker in loft, and then a conversation with the golfer in terms of visuals, top line, etc.
So deal breakers for me would be head weight. automatically rules some, like, take Mura, for example. There are just some golfers that their head weights are heavier than most by 4 or 5 grams. So that just rules them out for some players because you just can't get to certain swing weights.
Yeah.
And then, if you're looking to keep flight and spin, then a low spin head, take a, something like, sometimes a T150, or I'd take the new Callaway, the AI 200. That you just can't go anywhere near because it flattens the flight down.
Yeah.
Or if you're looking to bring the flight down, you wouldn't go a T100 because it adds flight and spin. So those would be the key things for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Overall. It's a conversation with the golfer, I guess, as well, in terms of what they're looking for from their new set, in terms of that's going to last them for the X amount of years. Is it additional distance? Is it more control? Are they moving into something new because they've improved as a golfer, or do they feel like maybe they're getting a bit slow and they needed a bit more help? So that kind of comes into it as well.
Only about 10 different things.
Yeah.
Horse racing legends. I bet he's not ridden the Bordeaux Velodrome like me, though. Looking forward to you answering all these questions, some interesting ones. Have you ridden the Bordeaux Velodrome? He's a fit lad, though, this chap.
No.
Got his own, does a bit of PT as well.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Just the thought of how sore part of me would be getting on a bicycle again.
Definitely not. That's definitely not
or
my
just
sport,
being in Lycra generally, you wouldn't want to see that.
No, definitely
not. Mammal, I think, is the phrase that they have. For those that aren't familiar with the
good way
British
to burn off wine.
Middle-aged men in Lycra. Doug, apart from an obvious weight, actually there are a couple of these that cycle through. So Stu60, hi both. Thanks for the awesome fitting session this morning, Simon. Pleasure to see you. Can I ask, how does the lead tape used in fittings translate into the final build? So we use a bit of lead tape to fine-tune swing weight because actually it's a convenient way of adjusting and fine-tuning. We'll fine-tune to 0.1 of a swing weight point during the fittings. And so where we generally put that is, actually that's quite useful. We'll keep that one out. In an iron, with steel in particular, well, actually with steel or graphite, the bottom of the hosel bed where the shaft goes into is about here from depth point of view. So obviously there's glue in the bottom here, but you can put a certain amount of mass. So I'm pointing, it would help if I actually put my finger to the right side of the hosel for you to see. There's glue that's right down the bottom here that you're bonding the shaft to the head with, but you'd use some tungsten, or we used either some glue tip mass or some tungsten powder in hollow shafts, in steel shafts. Which is then hammered down and sealed down, which stays right down that bottom end there. Or in graphite, you've got to glue in a tip mass, a mass inserted into the bottom of the shaft because the internal wall is too small to put mass down. And you really shouldn't do that with graphite. And we have seen it before, but you'll basically end up filling the shaft up to about here, which really isn't good. You don't want the mass to sit above the hosel if you can help it. In my instance, as you can see here, sometimes you do leave the lead tape on.
Old school.
Old
school.
It's for me, once I get it spot on, I just leave it. Ironically, doing this, I like pretty club heads, but I'm not that fussed by a bit of lead tape on there, obviously. And then in woods, there are two methods. Sometimes you do leave the lead tape on, or I do. And then you've got on some of the heads the weights that are on the head. So some of the glued in weights, screwed in weights in the bottom. And there's actually, from the lead tape point of view, there's a great Instagram handle called Lead Tape Chronicles, where Billy Horschel's done all sorts of weird and wonderful things. I think he ground the back of his heads down and then lead taped them because he wanted a slightly different mass positioning. Yeah. So some players really go to town.
Yeah, I think the tall guys are obviously very particular about where they have it on their golf clubs as well, in terms of, I don't think you can add potentially enough to really change CG location. You'd have to really be going some to, but if you're grinding some away and then you're adding a substantial amount, you could change CG location. But I think this is just fine touches, isn't it, really, in terms of what you're doing here?
For this, in terms of what I've got on there, you've got a 7-iron head weight that's 267 grams, and I've put 1 to 2 grams on, and a 200-gram driver head that I've got 1.5 grams on. You're not moving center of mass enough because the proportional weight's not moving enough to change the way it performs. However, on something like an iron head, if you're adding 10 grams or so in, or if you need to, which is quite exaggerated, then I would want to put a few grams of that on the center of the back of the club head rather than putting it all in the hosel. So, but if you're adding that much, then we'd question the the components that you're using, and is there something better out there to achieve
Some
that?
guys use hot melt as well. They'll hot melt.
Yeah, so you can,
occasionally.
on hollowed out on wood heads.
Yeah.
Hot melt is glue, and so every wood head will have a certain amount in because it catches debris.
Yeah.
And the brands use them to get the heads to tolerance on weight. So it's something that you don't want to do a lot of.
No.
But again, that's a good way of getting it into a wood head.
Yeah.
Yosh Nathavat S, I hope I got that right. I'm one of those people who get trigger finger from grip. Thinking of upsizing the grip, will this make much difference on swing weight? Do you have to add tip weight? I think it depends on, it will affect weight. It depends on how many layers you add and or what grip you go to. So, 5 grams on the grip is a swing weight point. So you then have to add 2 back to the head, or thereabouts. The formula for tape, if you're adding full layers of tape for every, I might double check with James exactly, but I think if you're adding 3 or 4 layers of tape, it's about 3/4 of a swing weight point. So, a single layer of tape, 0.2 of a point, most players could probably get away with that.
Yeah.
Once you go to 2 or 3,
4,
then
you can start feeling it.
Yeah, you're going to need to add a half a point or so back in. So it will have an impact no matter what you do. But bigger will mean not having to clamp down as much and should relieve some discomfort and get you back a bit of control as well. We have the first hitting request. Richard Skinner. My back was starting to get stiff. Can you compare the PXG 317 T iron versus the Gen 7 P iron with the Dynamic Gold 115 shaft, please?
Grab those.
I'm assuming that's the Dynamic Gold mid for that one.
Mid, what was the flex, sorry?
I'll just go with the stiff in the 115. Yeah. Whilst Nick's getting those components, I'll switch the screen back on because we've been nattering away and the screen's gone off. So Mr. Titleist highlights any tips to compress irons a bit more. I'm more a sweeper than a divot taker. Now, this is one misconception. You do not have to hit down heavily on an iron to get compression. What you do need is shaft lean, though. So someone like Tiger, some of the, Darren Clark's saying the most impressive thing he ever saw was Tiger practicing, I think it was the Ryder Cup, wet turf, and didn't take a divot. Now, you'd never say Tiger doesn't compress his irons, but if you're shallow through and you're catching it at the bottom of the arc and picking it, if you don't have any forward shaft lean, you can't get any forward momentum. And really, compression is about, I would say, is more about, go back to the phrase Nick used earlier, dynamic loft. I'll do a couple of things of this. So if you don't deliver a strong dynamic loft, you're not going to deliver efficient ball speed. So you get ball speed by producing what we call a strong, i.e. a shaft lean, a handle forward delivery. Now, whereas if it's a weaker position if it's here, so you're adding loft through impact, and from here you're taking loft off. There are good ways and bad ways of doing the strong shaft delivery position. Stuart, I'm sure, would say, well, key things to look at is where your grip's at. If you're a weaker gripper of the club and the grip's underneath, then it's hard to get that shaft lean because it just opens the face up. And that tends to promote more of an under release. Whereas if you get a stronger, more kind of on top grip position, then it's easier to get the handle lead and the face stays squarer. But if I were, let's get the lower back moving, if I work underneath and pick it, then I get higher launch. I haven't hoisted it up too much, but higher launch and a bit of a weaker, actually struck that really well, a bit of a weaker ball flight. And just by getting that handle forward, I can get, whether you may or may not be able to hear in the sound of the contact, a much stronger ball flight position has gone from 19 degrees to 15, just by getting that stronger shaft forward delivery position. If you just push the handle forward, then what's going to happen is you're going to open the face up and hit a weak shot outright. So I'm not going to say what technique you should use. However, in order to get that strong delivery position, it generally requires body rotation and clearing to be able to get that shaft, that handle forward, strong impact position, stronger delivery. If you're coming at it from here, then it's actually quite a big technique move to do. So definitely consult a coach about what you're doing that's creating that position, but you haven't got to hit down on it heavily, but normally your low point's at the ball rather than after it, and so a more downward strike is a result of getting in a stronger impact position. But there are lots of technique things that could be the way forward, but those would be just a start point to them.
DG 115.
No, that's beautifully volunteered, wasn't it? Here you go, sir. Here's the club you're
You're
going to
warmed up now. You've hit 2 shots.
I've got my glove on, haven't I? So I'm between the two heads. The Gen 7s, the latest edition, the P is a kind of players series. More offset, wider sole, stronger loft than the 317T. T for kind of a tour series. So come and stand up here.
Yeah.
What would you expect to see difference-wise between them?
Well, just because of where CG is and loft is. Again, it depends on how the golfer delivers it. Are we talking shaft as well here? Because we've gone into the 115 mid.
Initially, the difference in what you'd expect from head performance between the two.
Just construction of this, more ball speed, definitely.
Yeah.
It's going to be thinner in the face, so spin's going to be down a little bit. Obviously, you've comboed it a little bit with a mid-launch, mid-spin shaft there as well, the dynamic gold.
The T on the, it might be left of your screen, you can see the different thickness of the head there. So there's more, they put more weight down on the bottom of this.
Yeah.
Got thinner face, more infill.
Yeah. So
designed for distance. Really.
Simply, you'd expect, because of the thinner face, because of where the loft is, I'd expect more ball speed. Yeah. But also it depends on how the golfer is delivering it as well, in terms of where that CG is.
Okay. Yeah, you can get players that it sits too deep for, and ends up you get like almost like a dead spot high up the face. So let's see. Glad you gave me the forgiving one first. It's very kind of you. Yeah, that's a
nice strike.
That's a pretty low launch for that.
Yeah.
I mean, very stable head, but so I get in a strongish position, but that is 4,000 spin on a 6-iron.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what they've always sort of produced, right?
Yeah, I mean, it goes on 149 smash.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're rockets.
Yeah. I've almost missed that. That's right out of the heel. So interesting to see. That was a horrible strike. But again, 4,000 spin. So flight very consistent. That was just a horrific strike.
Yeah. Ball speed.
But actually kept a very consistent ball flight. Have you got the wrench?
Yeah.
Ah, there we go. So yeah, a bit of a rocket ship from a flight point. However, if you're someone who hits a bit of a higher, weaker shot, or let's say weaker, higher, spinnier flight, weaker, more just the terminology that historically golfers use, then as a head, good. I mean, that's still a 140 efficiency, and that was a horror show from a strike point of view. Right.
Well, just like you were saying there about leaning the shaft, right? So for somebody who potentially doesn't get into that stronger dynamic, the loft on the club is almost kind of doing that for them, so to speak. It's almost kind of cheating the equation a little bit.
So much neater head style, more what I'm used to seeing, I guess.
Mid-top line.
But, yeah, and a bit more loft on as a result as well of the model change.
Different construction, different acoustic straight away.
So up at, we'll see where the loft sits. That I've gone to, so got into a stronger impact position. Actually got a better contact on it as far as I like the feel, but the spin's up 700 revs. Yeah. So I'm swinging, because I've been stood in the same position for 3/4 of an hour. Not going to swing at full pace because I don't do myself a mischief. But so actually, kind of 84, very moderate. More representative club speed for most average players out there. And so you can see distance-wise, and that's 12 yards difference from the first shot, with what a 142 efficiency versus 149, which I'd be pleased with that on my driver. Yeah. But the extra spin as well. So not only have we got less ball speed, we've got more spin, which from a control point of view is going to give you more stopping power. So 16 launch, 4.9 on spin. So totally different ball flight performance off those two heads, but they are designed to be very, very different. Yeah. So shaft-wise, the dynamic gold mid helps a bit of flight and a bit of spin. Realistically, it's minimal. And you're not going to change the way that the P head performs for spin. It's not going to give you loads of extra flight because the head's such a strong ball flight. But yeah, for anyone if you're looking for more flight, more spin, more control, less overall distance as a kind of concern, then the tee's always been a very good head. I like that as an all-round head. Their irons have been very good. With the Gen 2, 3, 4, 5 P series, they've got stronger over the years, almost to the point where I wonder whether they're a bit too hot. But so actually kind of blending, for example, I don't think they blend particularly well anymore. They're too separated, I think.
Once upon a time they did. You could do a nice combo set there, but then maybe they're a bit too different now, I think.
So let's just make sure I've not a few more questions come through. Here we are. Right, we're going to start. There have been some great questions. There are loads of questions. We're going to start where we've got 10 minutes left. 10 minutes left. Right, we're going to crack through as many as we can. Right.
Speed round.
So, Mr. Titleist. I think there are a couple. Either I've missed a couple or skipped a couple. Not skipped a couple, but going back over. I think we've already done that one. Yeah. Oh yeah, I followed on to that. Yeah. Philip Langley, just returning to golf after not playing for 7 years. Clubs fitted in 2013. How much benefit to be club fitted now? Tech improvements since 2013 and swing changes since I last played. I think tech improvements throughout. Yeah. I think you're going to see something now. 11 years on.
Definitely.
I'd normally say 3 cycles onwards would be where there'd be a noticeable gain, and that would be 5 or 6 now.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest gain, depending on what you need. If you need a bit of performance from the irons, you're going to notice I think a big change in terms of consistency as well as a bit of help.
Yeah.
And fairways being better off the deck.
Definitely, in terms of more friendly head size, shallower, easy to hit off the deck. Definitely, I would totally agree with that. Absolutely, but then also just consistency of the shafts as well now, and also just options, more options now as well. Definitely at the lighter weights in terms of stability, depending on what speed the golfer brings to the table. The lighter options now are fantastic.
I've said it a few times. I think on the Monday Lives, I think we're now at. You'd hope so by now, but I think this. Across the board in terms of range from shafts, heads, performance in particular, I don't think I've ever seen a more balanced performance across all the brands.
Definitely.
I feel like you've really there's something you can put in everyone's hands and have a solution, which before they've always been kind of black holes, I think, in terms of performance, but I think there's great options now.
Absolutely, across the board.
Shako, looking for a 15-degree fairway, looking at the Titleist GT line, looking to hit it off the tee and from the fairway. Not the fastest, around 100 miles an hour. That's pretty quick. And fairly shallow from in to out. GT2 or GT3?
About 100 mile an hour club head speed it was. Well, we've probably done a little bit more with the GT3 so far this season because of, in terms of performance, we found where that CG placement is, it's probably been a little bit friendlier. But certainly
proportionally to TSR or just?
Well, it's a better head for sure. I think in the Bay, we've noticed it so far. Definitely, I think we're going to do more proportion of Titleist fairway woods than we have done previously. I think the pings have always been very friendly. The Callaway's been fantastic last couple of seasons, but I think definitely this is the best Titleist fairway wood we've seen for quite some generations now as well. I think
depends on what spin you need.
Yeah,
I think they're both much better for a shallower delivery than Titleist have ever been. I'd say the GT2 goes almost like a ping-like launch, maybe a hair less spin, but it's ping-like in the way it picks it up. The GT3 actually picks it up, whereas a TSR3 or
it's not
TS3 would just have knocked it right down. I think it depends if you need the stronger spin, the GT3. You want a little bit more spin, the GT2. I think they're both good for that.
And you got different loft options there as well. So don't restrict yourself to the 15 degree. You could try the 16.5 in the GT3 to try and give you the initial launch, but the lower spin. Definitely worth trying both of those heads rather than just going with just the one option.
And difference in face height between the 2 and the 3? There's not an awful lot actually.
No.
They're not that different.
Yeah, it's more front to back.
But the 3's a little bit more compact. Rather than
more CG placement, if anything.
Noel 19_88. Hi gents, I've irons with AMT White S300. I like the weight in the longer irons. The short irons are tough work. Any recommendations that feel similar to the longer iron shaft weight? So that's around on 15 gram. So depending on how much you want out the tip, Modus 120. In the stiff, that's not going to be a million miles off. I think nip on 1150 is not a million miles off. You just may not find that many places.
Yeah, maybe that mids that we've just hit there as well, potentially.
Yeah, and
PG.
the mids are quite tip heavy. That would be the only thing. But yeah, from a profile point of view,
But doing
that could be a good
100
option.
potentially, you want to drop a bit of weight off as well, depending. I get, you know, what head was it specified?
Not specified head, just the weights that feel similar to the longer iron shaft weight. So my start point on that would probably be the Modus.
Yeah.
I think as a kind of a good baseline.
Yeah, those two Nippon
114 grams in this dip. I think that's a good start line to me.
Yeah, that and the NS Pro, as you said.
So there's Chris Burgess's TP2000s have come back again. I think that's the same question as earlier. So he said, TP2000 are being built a 1/4 inch longer and tip weighted to D3 as they'll be fitted with mid-size egg core grips, pitch wedge currently 50 degrees. Yeah, I mean, that's why you didn't need gap wedges all those years ago, because pitch wedge was a gap wedge in current kind of money. So yeah, I'd say a 1/4 inch longer and so 1/4 inch longer would be probably close to stand length now. They might even be still a hair shorter, but that'll definitely help with the swing weight for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Kev T, hi Kev, good to see you. Great show. Can you show where to add lead tape on a driver and tell us what difference it will make depending on where it is? I would always put lead tape on the toe, simply because that's going to have the maximum effect. And by toe we mean kind of out like this one, out on that far end, because it's going to have the maximum effect on the swing weight. Because if you're adding it, you want to make it swing a bit heavier. In theory, if you put it on the inside of the head, on the heel side, in theory it's moving the CG more heel side, so it helps the toe come through a little bit more. In reality, unless you're adding a lot, it's not going to do anything other than its mass.
Yeah, I mean, I always prefer to keep the mass predominantly around underneath the predominant strike point of the golfer. So toe striker, heel striker. I'll actually move the rail more behind where their predominant strike is, more so than trying to influence face angle. If I'm trying to influence face angle, I'll do that more with the sleeve in terms of loft, or like in the shore fit, you can actually make it flatter or more upright. But I think a lot of time with when you're putting lead tape on, it's keeping it out of the way as well, so it doesn't fall off.
And that's actually why the toe as well, it's not going to, shouldn't strike the ground unless you hit a bad one and give it one of them.
It keeps it out of the way, so to speak.
Keep it off the ground contact and ball contact at all costs.
I think you'd have to really load it up to really influence the CG placement of a head with lead tape.
And if you're doing that again, you could probably get a different weight for the head to do that, and that will be more efficient anyway as well. Robin Morton, closest the pin with a club 10 yards short. So basically, we've got to keep it 10 yards short of the pin and see who gets it closest. We're going to get through a load of questions. If there's time to do a little close to the pin challenge at the end, we will do so. Chris Shanks, thoughts on the GT2 13.5 versus QI10 Tour 15 degree with the weight all the way forward? I mean, QI10 Tour is going to be less forgiving. I think that's one thing. The forward CG means if you're not someone who kind of gets the weight down to the bottom of the ball, you're not then going to get the pitch of flight up. So if you're more of a picker, GT2 is going to collect it a little bit.
Definitely this season, absolutely. That's going to be a low spin setup in the TaylorMade there.
And I think GT2 13.5, it's still really, if relative to loft, if you're looking to get a little bit of flight. QI10 Tour, I'd always use it if you're trying to bring the top down. So obviously you're doing it with loft on the GT2, but still in a head style to collect and get it airborne. Whereas QI10 is just
down
that way. So you could argue more of a steeper delivery QI10, shallow delivery GT2 would be kind of a baseline.
Somebody really hits down on it, and it's good with fairway woods.
Not that forgiving. If you toe it, there's no spin at all. So, Craig T had a lesson from Stuart. Changed my address. My iron striking has really improved with better ball compression, deeper divots. 8 handicap play T300s. Any advice on type of new iron to look at? So, if you've done that, you're delivering a stronger loft position. So then the T300s might be a little bit punchy.
A little bit hot on the loft and the construction of them. So if you want to stay in the Titleist range, something like a 150 potentially. Depends where you see your journey in terms of, are you somebody who's looking to improve greatly over the next 5?
Brought out the J word there.
How are you looking
We're
to
all guilty
improve?
of it.
How are you looking to improve over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah.
You know, you might want something that actually you grow into. So that's always a conversation with the fitter. But if you want to stay in the title list,
that's definitely a conversation we have quite a bit. Is where the player see, you know, where you. So I'll finish the sentence in terms of what do you get your satisfaction out of? Now that might sound a strange comment, but there are players who actually aren't that fussed about their score, but they want the feedback and they want to know when they get it right. So actually something like a T150 that there's still some performance from, but is a neater, smaller clubhead shape that you get a bit less forgiveness from proportionally, you might find actually that gives you more satisfaction. And if you're practicing and wanting to improve, that kind of gives you something to build into. Whereas, you know, another player might go, well, why make it harder than it needs to be? And then you'd go a more forgiving head. You know, maybe if you're if you're delivering a stronger position, you might want to go in something like a Mizuno 245 or something that keeps a bit of spin on and flight on, but gives a bit more forgiveness. So
yeah, depends where your striking's at. You know, ultimately the 300 is going to have a slightly deeper centre of gravity. It's going to make it a bit more forgiving. Could be weakening of the loft there, or it could be you fancy challenging yourself and putting something to the bag to give you a bit more feel. Therefore, moving into something like a Mizuno, or the Titleist in terms of the T150s construction-wise is softer. You're going to get a bit more feedback from that head.
Right, literally quick fire because it is on 7 o'clock. David O, hello fellas, question on iron suggestion, 10 handicap, want traditional lofts so I can play a very stable tipped shaft while being shallow into the ball and wanting some forgiveness, miss is thin. Well, the thin is because of the shallow delivery. Traditional lofts, I mean, you might, an I230.
Yeah,
that might be that's a good one. That's going to be more traditional loft in the retro loft in particular.
Yeah,
bit of tungsten in the sole for a bit of forgiveness.
Yeah, Apex CB potentially as well, picks up the spin a little bit.
Yeah, although less forgiveness on that.
Little less forgiveness, yeah, definitely.
So yeah, for me, I230, I think. Martin Lake, good fitting with Nick today, and interesting to see the way in which different grip weights affected the balance of the club, certainly within my own swing.
Absolutely, yeah. Talking about a golfer who came with blades to the fit, and that was because it was quite transparent about the fact that he wants to make the change to make himself better rather than masking it with a golf club. So a blade gives you that ultimate feedback.
This is true.
Yeah,
especially in winter.
Got some great results in the woods potentially as well.
Fabulous. Niels Axelson, what are your thoughts on when to transition from the longest iron to hybrids/woods? Trend seems to be replacing more of the long irons. PS, Nick is an appreciated alternative. Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. For me, it's where are you looking to increase your stopping power? So an iron will bring the flight down, and a long iron you're going to get lower spin, lower launch than you would a proportionate hybrid or fairway wood. So fairway wood maxes out height and spin. Hybrid will give more than an iron. And sometimes not more spin with some of the Callaways, but generally they're going to pick the flight up a little bit more easily. And it's just to what extent you want to do that and where your stopping power with an iron stops you holding a green. That would be for me, it varies player to player, but that's the process for me in terms of deciding.
What your miss is and what you're trying to work with as well. So a bit more draw bias in the hybrids potentially, a bit more versatility as well out of less than perfect lies.
Yeah. Josh Wright, tried a mate's T150 recently and ended up sending them to the moon. No matter the iron number, could it be shaft too light at 88 grams but ½ inch longer compared to my 120 gram plus ½ inch? I mean, you're going down like 25, 30% in the shaft weight. So it sounds like shaft weight is going to be the main thing. The T150s are still quite a strong hitting head. So a massive difference in shaft weight will be doing that. Mr. Titleist, great information. Thanks so much. Shane Delmo, that's one from earlier as well. Liam, what a great watch, thanks. And then Shako, thanks for the good answer to my question earlier. Might be leaning towards GT3 then. We got through them all.
All right, well done.
Well played, sir. Thank you so much to Nick for joining us tonight.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
We'll try and do this. We'll try and give them a bit more warning as well next time round. But no, something that the fitters that are happy to come on the lives, we will try and integrate them a little bit more. But great, and thanks for joining me today and saving my throat. And
I'll do some hitting next time, promise.
Okay, right, yeah.
Promise.
Yeah, so we ran out of time for the challenge, but yeah, it's great to get another fitter, to get that interaction, to hear, both thoughts on it rather than you just having to hear me bleat on about fitting principles. But thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great show. huge amount of questions. We're really appreciative of the interaction. Without that, we don't have a show, or it's a much more dull one. So it's been great to have all the questions in. If you like the show, check out all the other videos if you've not already. There's so much on the channel and loads coming as well. Who knows, next week we might be talking about some sensational shots up at St Andrews. So join hopefully Stuart next week alongside me, and you never know, Nick might be back in if not. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for joining us.
Have a great week.